you ever wondered why every time you go to your vet, it seems like they're recommending yet another vaccine? Are they really necessary, and are they really safe? Is it okay to just keep doing these new vaccines? We're going to talk about that today, and we're going to talk about why that is and really what you can do to best advocate for your dog in those situations.
So part of what happens with the plans that some of these big corporate practices have come out with, and a lot of this is filtered down to smaller private practices, where maybe you're supposed to go to the vet once a year or twice a year, and it seems like every time your dog gets some sort of a shot. And that is, definitely set up as a way for the practice to have continuous income. Vaccines are cheap to buy, but you can charge good money for them. And so they are pretty much the bread and butter of a lot of veterinary hospitals. Mm-hmm. I saw one veterinary record that I was reading recently so the dog got its puppy shots, and then it went back a year later for the adult boosters, and the dog was given a 3-year rabies vaccine, but only a 1-year distemper combo at that visit. That way, the distemper parvo combo was due again the following year so that you could stagger the visits, so that because the concern is, well, if I give the dog a 3-year rabies and a 3-year distemper, they're going to come back for 3 years.
Right.
And so that way, it at least kind of gave them alternating years, and then some of the vaccines like Lyme, leptospirosis, Bordetella, those are only good for 1 year, things like the canine influenza vaccine. And so then you have people coming in every year. From my perspective, because I've been in veterinary practice for coming up on 29 years this May, this profession did itself a disservice by pretending that the physical exam was not important. And so many practices had this policy where they didn't even charge for the physical exam. But if you came in and got a physical exam and the shots, then you paid for the shots. Mm-hmm. And what we did was we made the vaccines more important than the physical exam. Mm-hmm. And like I said, those are kind of maybe the real moneymaker, but we're doing our patients a disservice. Mm-hmm. That physical exam is potentially very important. You could argue, does my dog need a physical exam every year? Well, maybe not while they're young and relatively healthy. But at some point, it's helpful to have a set of eyes on your dog, somebody that can look in their mouth, listen to their heart, feel their abdomen, all the extra things that are part of the important physical exam that, in my mind, outweighs the value of repeated vaccines.
So one of the big questions that might be coming to the surface for you is, well, don't the vaccines run out? Don't I need to go in and get them revaccinated because they expire? They only last so long in their system. Isn't there science to say that? And the reality is there is actually no science to say that. There were studies, really good studies done a while back, and they even tried to bring it to the board to actually change the overall protocols. But unfortunately, many vets are still practicing the way that they've been practicing for decades. This science and these studies that were done were done for 7 years, and the only reason they didn't go past 7 years was because it costs money to keep doing those things.
Right, somebody has to fund a study.
Exactly, and so what happened was each of the dogs or the puppies in the study were given one of each vaccine at a very specific point in their puppyhood, and then they were titered, which is a titer test to check for antibodies. It's a blood test, for 7 years, and at the 7-year mark, they still had antibodies. And so bare minimum, what this is showing us is that this concept of every single year is gratuitous, and there's actually no science to back it, but there's just been a lot of pushback because it messes with that regular, right? That regular flow of clients.
Yeah, how can you plan your business if you can't count on regular income? Mm-hmm. So Dr. Ron Schultz at the University of Wisconsin-Madison was the only one who was doing duration of immunity studies, trying to answer the question, how long are these vaccines really good for? And he was like a lone voice in the wilderness, and bless his heart, he did it for like 40 years, and then he retired, and then sadly he passed away. What we were taught in vet school, again, I graduated almost 29 years ago. What we were taught in school was that the manufacturer has tested this vaccine either at 1 year or at 3 years. At 1 year and 1 day or 3 years and 1 day, you don't know. You don't know what happens, so you better do what the manufacturer tells you to do. And here, 30 years later, you'd think that we would know everything there is to know about the immune system. You'd think that we would know that that is really kind of a stupid idea, that at 3 years and 1 day, your immunity vanishes.
Right.
And yet nobody has gone down that road. There's no profit there. So nobody is really interested in the answer. The other thing that I found out at the state veterinary conference this year is that I attended a lecture titled Adverse Vaccine Reactions in Veterinary Medicine, and there's literally no data. Nobody has been keeping track. There's no reporting system. Nobody's collected this information, and so the assumption is maybe it's not there. And I've had clients tell me that their vet told them that they've never seen a dog have a vaccine reaction. And it's one of those things where, you know, if you don't look at what you don't want to see, you're not going to see it.
And so how does this keep being perpetuated even though there's no science there? Well, another important thing to realize is that the big drug companies, the vaccine manufacturers, they're the ones that really control what is taught in the schools and in the continuing education for vets and vet techs. And so that is what is being taught. And so the reality is that how are they supposed to know any different, right?
Right.
So there is an element of you know, it can be very misleading or confusing, and you know, your vet is doing what they are taught to do. It's just in certain situations, there are some veterinarians, like in your experience, where you saw exactly what happened when you would vaccinate, and you did notice adverse reactions, and kind of woke up to there's something to this.
And then at some point, I read the vaccine insert that came with the vaccines every time I ordered them, and I just sat down and read it one day, and I was appalled. So nowadays, vaccines don't come with inserts anymore. There's some printed information on the little piece of cardboard that's in like the top of the vaccine tray, but that's not the full insert information that used to be available. It still warns the veterinarian not to vaccinate animals that are not healthy, and that's the vaccine manufacturer effectively divesting themselves of liability. So if you call them and say, hey, I vaccinated this dog and then this bad thing happened, their answer is, well, the dog was not healthy. We told you not to vaccinate animals who aren't healthy. The thing is that in general private practice, the criteria are so low. Essentially, if you can stand, breathe, and have a heart rate, you are considered healthy enough for vaccination, which I would contend does not take into account all the chronic illnesses. The reason the people are at the vet in the first place, they're there often because there's a health problem. And yet vaccines are given as if they never cause any harm. I think of it as they're just handed out like candy, like nothing bad could ever happen.
So the reality is over-vaccination is a real issue. Why is this a real issue? Because that is what they're not benign. There are risks and there are negative side effects that come along with those. And a lot of people are not taught to look at what adverse reactions actually are, or that vaccinosis is even a thing to be concerned about. And so there are times where your animal could be experiencing all sorts of adverse reactions to a vaccine, but you've not been taught that that's connected, right? And so what are some of these ways that pets are being over-vaccinated? A lot of times with puppies especially, they're given way too early. Puppies are born with maternal antibodies that last them quite often until 16, 17 weeks. It can vary depending on the breed. It can vary depending on the female, the mom of the litter. But then when you're giving these puppies their shots at 8 weeks, 9 weeks, 10 weeks, those maternal antibodies are going to kick out and cancel out that vaccine, but the vaccine still gets to do some damage. So it's not uncommon to see a UTI show up in a puppy, or different ailments and illnesses show up in a puppy from these, because they are still getting some of the negative side effects from that. So they keep doing boosters to try and catch when the maternal antibodies run out. And in that time, they've been revaccinated so many times that it's no wonder that our puppies get sick.
Right.
So that's number one. Number two, you've got boosters that are given way too close together.
Right. And so we've seen some cases where puppies have been vaccinated sometimes even a week apart,
right,
or 2 weeks apart. That is too soon. You have to give the immune system time to recover. It's also because of the way vaccines affect the immune system, they take a huge toll. A vaccine is not a magical cloak of immunity. It's not like you vaccinate the dog and poof, now they're protected against parvo. No, the immune system has to respond to the vaccine. White blood cells are called in. The whole immune system revs up to deal with this insane threat that has been injected through the skin in a way that we don't normally get diseases. So there are no systems in place to deal with this on the regular. So timing between vaccines becomes important. So I've seen some cases where the owners want to maybe vaccinate a little more judiciously, and so they ask the vet to space the vaccines out a little more. Spacing them 1 or 2 weeks apart is actually a really bad idea, because then you're hitting the immune system again when it's down. So for example, I had one case where the owner wanted to take the dog hunting. The dog had never had a vaccine, so he took it into the vet, got a rabies vaccine at 7 months old, and then a week later he took it hunting. And lo and behold, the dog was around other dogs. Its immune system was not in good shape because it had just been vaccinated a week before. It was new, it was exciting, there were other dogs there, and the dog got parvo. It survived, but it's kind of clear when you see how does disease develop. So that's probably a really bad idea. So for example, people who get their puppies a booster shot in the morning, and then in the evening, there they are at your obedience class, or a week before the puppy's going to start obedience class or start going to daycare. That's not great timing. Some of the vaccines also just don't work very well. So the parvo vaccine is typically pretty effective at preventing parvo. No vaccine is going to protect 100% of the animals who are vaccinated. So do vaccinated puppies still get parvo? Yep. So if you think about the bacterial diseases, Lyme, leptospirosis, kennel cough, these are not effective vaccines. The kennel cough vaccine is so ineffective that all it really does is spread kennel cough. And so, for example, a friend of mine texted me the other day that the place where she goes for training, a bunch of the dogs there have been coming down with kennel cough. And why would that be if they're raw fed, they're healthy, they're blah, blah, blah. And my suspicion is that somebody came in with a dog who was recently vaccinated for kennel cough, and it's just spreading bacteria and viruses in the atmosphere with other dogs, and it's probably making the other dogs sick. And we see this quite often. This is actually why boarding kennels tend to have outbreaks of kennel cough, even though they require that every dog be vaccinated before they come in. So some boarding kennels have kind of gotten smart about this, and they've told their clients, if you're going to vaccinate against kennel cough, wait at least 10 days before you come in for boarding. May or may not work, we don't know.
So Dr. Levy, if somebody is trying to, maybe they're not ready to jump on the holistic train and, immunize with homeopathy, which is an option, by the way, and they still are wanting to utilize vaccines, what would you encourage people is the most responsible way that you can do that, knowing that there's always going to be risk? It's not 100% effective to keep these animals, but it's like, what would you recommend?
Gene Dodds, who's an integrative vet in California, has come out with kind of a minimalist vaccination schedule. And so I refer people to that a lot. If people still want to vaccinate, you can go into any vet clinic with the chart from Gene Dodds of what she recommends and at what age, and just say, I would like to follow this protocol Are you willing to play along? Because I'm sure many vets would be willing to. The other thing that I did when I was still in an integrative practice is I quit vaccinating 8-week-old puppies. And so when people would show up in my office with their 8-week-old puppy that they just got from the breeder, and the breeder said to them, oh, by the way, it's going to need a shot, you better take it to the vet, I would not vaccinate at that initial visit. If you got the puppy on Saturday and here it is Monday morning and you're in my practice, you don't know enough about your puppy. You don't know if it's healthy. You don't know if it's coming down with something. You don't know if it's going to have diarrhea. You don't even know if it's eating regularly. Like, you know nothing about this dog, essentially. And so at that point, at 8 weeks, I would start them on raw food, start them on supplements. I would have them come back 2 weeks later, and then at 10 weeks, I would start them on vaccines. And I had a much healthier patient population, a lot fewer problems with the puppies. Nowadays, of course, I don't vaccinate.
We've learned that there is a great alternative.
But in the end, it's like, it's just, you have fewer problems delaying vaccines. And then I know sometimes people get that 8-week-old puppy and they're like, but the daycare, but the boarding, but the training class, but really those socialization is super important. You do have to take your puppy places. You do need to expose it to other dogs. But really, like, that first week or two, that puppy needs to be in the bosom of your family. You need to be bonding with it. You need to be spending time with it. It needs to be integrating into your household.
And so for anybody watching this, that's a great option if you do still want to continue on with vaccines. But just also know that there is an alternative approach. It is definitely just as, if not more effective, when following a full natural rearing protocol. So you want to have your diet in place. You don't want to be putting chemicals on your dog. There is a little bit to it. It's not an even swap for vaccines. We never want people to think that. But if you're interested in something like that, it is using homeopathy to immunize, build immunity into your animal. And we have a wonderful guide that lays it out very simply and very effectively on a good protocol to follow. And we'll link that in the description box below. Just please understand that it is absolutely a problem, this concept of over-vaccinating, and that no vaccine is 100%, and they're certainly not benign. They have plenty of risk that come along with them. And so make sure you do your research. We will link a lot of really good resources below so that you can do a little bit of research on your own. We want people to be empowered with knowledge. We don't ever want anybody to just do something because we told them to do it. You have to know why. It's very, very important for you to be very confident in your decision, and that comes with knowledge. And so we'll put some things in the description box below to help really give some tools for that and at least get you on the right trajectory so you can figure out where you land and you can figure out what's most important to you and how you want to advocate for your dog. But just please know that this is a big reason that our dogs are so sick today. It is a huge cause of allergies and ailments and cancer, this over and over and over and over and over, and there's absolutely no science to back doing it. So please check our resources down below, and we really hope that this is empowering and that maybe if you hadn't stopped to think about this as a problem before, you are now.